Hey, everybody, welcome to Business Lunatics, the weekly show where the four fearless loonies pull back the curtain on the wild, the wonderful, and sometimes downright ridiculous world of entrepreneurship. We go through this with no fluff, no BS. It's just pure business madness, which is why we're all lunatics when it comes to being in business. With that in mind, I'm going to ask Rochelle to start off today's show where we're going to be talking about talent, acquisition, and time constraints, and focus a little bit more on human resources.
Oh my God, is that I don't know if it's a favorite topic, but it's one of the ones that I think so many small businesses struggle with. We walk around day to day and we say, I always ask people, in a company, what's the talent that if you brought in that talent, it can make the biggest difference in your organization? Not the title, but what's the talent? And then how do you find the talent? But identifying the talent is very, very important. I've seen so many job descriptions when people are trying to hire, they're so generic. They want one person to come in and do everything. They want them to do the marketing, the sales, overseas, accounts receivables. The only thing they don't do is when the person walks in, they don't hand them a vacuum cleaner and say, at the end of the day, we would appreciate it if you take care of this as well.
That happens, don't worry.
They want this, and here's the key: the owner wants to pay $1, and the
Right.
new employee that comes in wants partnership in the firm. So there's a little bit of a gap in expectations. I've only been in the job force for I don't know. I just graduated. I'm in the job force. I don't know, maybe 3 days, maybe three and a half if you stretch it. But yet I want a salary that's commensurate to somebody that's been in business for 25. And of course, I have an attitude and a chip on my shoulder, which you're going to have to learn to live with because most people in my generation are very the same. So, like, what do you do?
You
What do you
know, I
do? What do you do? And I've seen now one of the problems with every single company I work with is when I tell them that they have to hire, I have to hand them a bottle of Pepto Bismol to go in with that conversation. They get immediately nauseous. Nauseous.
Well, isn't that a little bit about the whole concept that they want to do it themselves versus delegating, or the delegating too late, or they're drowning in the work that they're doing and they don't have time to delegate? I mean,
Let's start with
it's
that. Let's
crazy.
start with, when by the time somebody hires somebody, they're
Yeah.
so overworked and in flood. I call it in flood. They're so busy that they can barely breathe. They can't inhale and exhale. So when you hire somebody, they have absolutely no time to train. They want somebody to come in and through some sort of miracle osmosis, they're going to be able to download everything in my brain into the other person's. And it doesn't happen.
And
I
it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen overnight.
it
It's
No,
doesn't
it
like,
happen
I mean, this
overnight.
is right.
And
But this
business
is the
owners, how guilty are we? I'm sure if you don't raise your hand, I'm all going to say liar, liar, pants on fire. How many of us are guilty of this? We have no patience because
yeah,
by the time
35
we
years
hire
ago.
somebody, I don't have, 7.5 months to onboard them so that they really can know what they're doing so that I can breathe and really have confidence. We have no patience.
But
And
you know
because
what?
Yeah.
of that,
But
hiring becomes difficult. Go ahead, Steve.
I'm going to say, and this is where I think a lot of small businesses make a huge mistake. They don't define the job description. They don't take the time to do a talent assessment. They don't take the time to create a playbook, a way to train them exactly on how to do the job duties. They don't have a set of core values defined so they can look for the right person that embodies those core values of the CEO and the whole organization. And they end up hiring and firing, which costs you so much more money than it does to pay somebody more and hire the right talent. And people
Sure.
do this all the time. Bigger organizations, true. They have HR departments, they have the money, they can have all this stuff done. But if you're a smaller organization, leverage artificial intelligence to help you at least get some semblance of a talent assessment, job scorecard, a job description, and then you can have it do your resume selecting for you so you can then go through and only get the cream of the crop to look at. And now I'll tell you the big one, huge, hire them on a tentative basis or on a
Yeah,
probationary
your
period,
90-day
90
Yeah,
day
90,
probation.
probation,
right, 90
whatever.
days.
And every day, this is something that I learned from my scaling up days. Every day, have them recite the core values of the organization. And if they can't do it, they don't want to do it, they're probably not a good fit. Because if you got A players and everyone's wind them up, let them go. That's what I call an A player. They're just little running around doing what they got to do. If you get a C player or a D player in there, you're going to piss off all your A players, and then you're going to have a real problem on your hands because now you're taking really good people that are performing and making your company what it is, and they're going to be dragged down to that person's level. Not a good thing.
No, and I'm going to carry that forward a little bit more. And that's, you get the situation where you need to get somebody, you find somebody, you think that they're a good fit. And the key word is think. You bring them on board. And like we said earlier, there's no plan, there's no training, no nothing. And here it is. And you go. And, you may be lucky and get someone that can pick up the ball and run to the end line, to the goalpost. However, the majority of the time is going to be a face plant. And the other thing too is that you're going to run into cultural change issues because you didn't take the time to really see if that person's going to fit into your environment.
Yep.
I've seen it many times where you brought somebody in and their personality type clashes with other people, even though they're able to do the work. Their personality type is so abrasive that it creates a conflict in the office environment if you have a couple people on board, and it becomes a toxic environment just like that.
Yeah, everybody should be either DISC or Colby or Trimetrics or, Working Genius. You figure out whatever flavor of modus of operandi type of testing. But if you understand how that person thinks, how they work, what they like, what they don't like, how they function, you can put together a really great organization by not putting the wrong people in the right seat. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
sure. And then
Eh,
it's the other part is also having other people know how to communicate with other people. And, I had a guest on my show not too long ago where they actually got this company had, a lot of interpersonal issues. And they put like a little sign on each person's cubicle. And this is the way I prefer to be communicated with. And all of a sudden, 50% of the problems went away right away.
Yep.
One of
Yep.
the
Have
things
another
that I
idea.
did,
Go ahead, Melih. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, that's right. One of the things I did, I mean, look, I've had the company now for 38 years, right? And listen, way back when made all the mistakes in the world, right? So step number one, hey, let me put an ad in the paper. Let's get some resumes in here, right? And so we did that for a number of years, and that was just a complete disaster. But I also had the unfortunate pleasure of living through the financial crisis in the Detroit metro area, where Detroit was ground zero back in those days, if you guys remember 2008,
Yep.
2009, 2010.
Yep.
Well, as we were getting out of that and our clients were starting to get back into the market in Q4 2010, I'm like, well, I don't want to say rehire per se, but yeah, I mean, we narrowed everybody down to just a handful of bodies to help with the clients that we had. But now, as the large corporations are coming back to the market, now what do we do? And so we did something very interesting in terms of, hey, we tapped into our existing people that we knew, people that we liked, people that were similar to us, and say, who do you know? And okay, fine. We started bringing one, two, three people in like that. Once we found that they worked, we think, oh, we're getting along. This is good, right? Everybody's happy. I went to that team, that group, and I said, hey, listen, we need to hire two more people or three more people, whatever the number was. And they, in turn, those three people
Like, who
tapped
do you
into their
know?
network, right? Who do you know? And they brought it. Now, the reason I'm using this as a case study is number one, that team right now is 25 strong and 14 years together. right?
Mhm.
Birds of a
That's number one.
feather flock together, my friend.
I was
You
just
already
going to say
know.
the same thing.
Yeah. And
It's so true.
but you
what?
bring
It
up a
is
great you
true,
bring
and
up a
it
great
I
point.
worked.
think
Yeah, you bring up a
David,
great
I
point,
think
Melih.
you got to be
And
careful with that because, again, unless you have a very specific scorecard, it can really run into a snag. I
But
see a
we're
lot.
not
Yeah, I'm
talking
not
best
saying I'm
friends
not.
partying, hanging out. We're talking
No,
the
no, no,
same
no.
right.
This.
the
If-
same type of person like to work with the same ilk or same type of other person
Yep,
that gets
that's
that. They
exactly what
all work
happened.
on the
And
same
listen,
level.
Rochelle, you're right. It could go south as well.
Yeah.
But I will. I feel comfortable saying this. The people that that those people recommended, they're not likely to recommend people that they don't like or the people that they may not feel comfortable with. Rather, they recommended people that they were comfortable with. They came in. Now, what was interesting about this also resolved the problem that Freddie was mentioning earlier, was the interpersonal skill or the relationships and the communication didn't become an issue.
right,
They were all
right.
of the same ilk at the end of the day. There were similar people that within some boundary they were able to work with each other.
And
Listen,
it goes, but
don't get me,
I want
yeah,
to, I
don't
want
get
to, I
me
want
wrong.
to, I
Our
want to go
tech
for.
team sometimes clashes with our marketing team, okay? But that doesn't mean that they can't sit at the dinner table together.
Right. Let me expand upon that because the other thing too is, for example, my wife works for a company and they have a program that if you refer people, you get, a bonus for referring that people, that person. And she's referred several people, and one of the things she really goes out of her way, and I really want to add to what Melih said, was making sure that the person she's referring not only can hang with the group, but more importantly, can deliver work-wise because then it's a
Yeah,
reflection back to her. So she's,
I agree.
there's been one person that didn't work out, and that was fine because of the way it went down. But the other person loves the job, and and they always communicate with one another because they're friends. So you've got that energy. The other thing I want to share with is that I had a guest that ran a VA company in Central and South America and was working, and they were looking for a particular programmer, and they reached out to all, and this is all contractors because they're all VAs. And same thing, they've got, they make sure that even though they're independent contractors, that they all work together harmoniously. And then they went to that pool for one of their big clients that's in the US, and within their pool of contractors, found somebody for this particular position that gelled and worked perfectly for the company. And that company was super fans of the VA agency because they brought in somebody, and that elevated the contractor that was already working for them for referring this person. So it's a W all the way across.
I want to bring something else up, and I think we have to be sensitive around this. I love a lot of these earlier companies, smaller companies. They really want to go cheap. So I love this one. Aunt Selma's nephew is going to come in and take over
Right.
marketing. And I look at them, are you out of your mind? They say the guy, no, he's posting day and night. I said, the guy's not a marketer. He knows how to use an iPhone. That doesn't mean he understands strategy. That doesn't mean he understands your product. That doesn't mean he's got the psychological background in business. He's very proficient in using an iPhone. That does not make him a marketer.
No.
And I said,
At
how
all.
can you take the most important part of your business? See, business is about money. And I just believe there's a faucet. One side of the faucet's called marketing. You do it right, out drips money. And the other one is sales. So how do you put the least experienced individual of business wherewithal in charge, or even
Yep.
aligned with the most important part of your business, which
It's
is
one
your revenue source? I said, are you out of your mind?
it's one of the
So when I
But
biggest
said it
problems.
that way, they were like, well,
yeah.
maybe Aunt Selma's nephew isn't the best idea. But they
Yeah.
want to get away cheap. Now the other one, we got to be careful because there's so much outsourcing now. We've got people that are being outsourced to India. We've got India, the Philippines. We've got South America. How are they being integrated culturally and with the same values? And they have to understand the American culture because what they're doing overseas doesn't necessarily translate into an American culture.
But
So
that's
we
where
got
the onboard,
to.
but I'm gonna expand what
A
you're saying.
lot of
That's where the
training.
onboarding is very important because the
Yeah.
person is maybe very, very qualified. And you're right, there's cultural differences, but you got to blend those things. And one of the guests that I had did something I had never heard of, and which was a brilliant strategy. And that was, the company would throw pizza party for the local people, the team. What this VA agency did was they would get a pizza locally sent to the VA contractor that worked for that company so they could
Okay.
participate in pizza
Cool.
day. I mean, I never heard of that, but talk about a power move and
The
talk about that's
connection.
exactly right. They don't
Boom.
feel like a VA anymore. They feel part of the team, and that changes the whole mental outlook of everything.
That's
Again,
perfect.
it's the little things that are really the big things. That was a little thing to do, but to that VA person out in, Argentina,
Wherever they are.
that was a huge thing for them.
And that also brings me to another point. Besides employees and hiring the right talent and maintaining and keeping the right talent saves you a ton of money. How about your vendor relationships?
Oh yeah.
How about who you have as a client? Do you want to work with a client that's a pain in the rear end and constantly complains and is never happy and pays you slow? I mean, those people also really need to have a onboarding process, and you need to have a process on who you're willing to work with. And here's our terms. And if it doesn't fit, you don't go changing your terms. These are our terms.
Now, let me throw a question out there because I don't have the experience in this. I have never hired virtual assistants or VAs, but in talking to other people who have hired VAs, my
Mhm.
understanding is if you have structured tasks, and I'm just saying, step one is this, step two is this, step three is this, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, maybe it goes up to step 10, 15, whatever that number looks like. Then these people are able to execute those tasks after the onboarding, Freddie. I agree with you that once you do the onboarding, you go through that training of what this task list looks like, that they can execute on it, and you're doing great. That's
There's
my
different,
that's
Yeah,
the
well,
feedback I've heard.
you're
there's
absolutely
different
correct. And the,
levels.
the thing that you can do that I think is so easy that nobody ever really thinks about is, especially if it's all electronic type stuff, basic in a computer, you can screen capture and record the tasks that you're
Oh,
doing
sure.
Use Loom.
and
Hmm.
how
Loom
you
You're
is
right.
great.
want them to
You're
do
right.
that. So you don't
Yep.
have to go back to writing it all down for 3 days. You can
Hmm.
do it in 15 minutes, record all the activity that you're doing. That's what I did with the people that are editing my podcast shows, for example. That we had a group meeting. I showed them the process. We recorded it as I showed them the process. Then I gave them the information. So now if they got a question, they go back and, oh, what was I was supposed to click? Oh, that's what I'm supposed to click. And the work that they deliver for me is outstanding because they're actually better than what I had put together because but they stay within the guidelines that we outlined.
So I happen to have a ton of experience in hiring virtual talent or offshoring.
Okay.
Back in my MSP, my managed service provider days, at offshoring talent versus hiring talent here. It's a lot less expensive to get it from overseas because the costs are lower there. It's going to cost you more here. But then, it's like you got to weigh out like what's important to you. Are you concerned with, or is it important for you to have an American speaking, American accent person necessarily communicating with your clients? For me, I could care less. Some people it matters, or their clients it matters. B, you'll pay more to get someone on the US side because our costs are higher. That's just a reality. Versus I've had a VA in the Philippines now for 3.5, almost 4 years. And I've done a ton of Loom videos. Here's your instructions. Here's how you do it. She helps me out with my LinkedIn and my social posts. I make sure, I have a set of processes I've laid out for her and taught her how to do it. But for instance, if you were to necessarily go with someone here that uses all the applications we use, you may pay more, but it might be a quicker onboarding. You
I've
know, and
also had clients that have, it's not even onboarding, it's the people that you work with. I have a client that somebody asked her the same question over and over again. I said, "You're a dingbat for even talking to them." They
you're a
come to your
dingbat.
desk, they bring their iPhone. When you sit down and you explain it to them, they pull out their phone, they record exactly what you're saying at that time on their phone, and they have it forever. It's personalized to their issue. I say that you do not allow anybody in your office for any type of Q&A unless they have their iPhone. This
Mhm.
way, as you're explaining it, they have it and they can go, you can follow the question. I really don't understand this. This way, they have their own personal tutoring, so to speak, on a particular issue. There's so much technology that we can use that can help things so much better, and we need to train effectively. We need to be very clear on what expectations are, and we need to measure what's good, bad, or indifferent. What is
I,
somebody that's doing a great job, and why is it a great job, and how can you improve somebody? And we need, as owners, and I'm telling you this, we're all guilty, we need patience because we want them to walk in on Monday. We want them to be fully trained Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, and it's not happening. We need to be very clear on our delivery, and we need patience.
And I'm
Something
going
else I've
to go,
learned.
I'm going to add to that is you also need to be able to empower that individual because they may have ideas that you didn't even think of or
Yep.
even perceive of.
Yep.
And if you shut them down and says, this is how we're doing it, and that's it, you might lose out on better, more effective approaches with some better tools that they may already bring to the table.
Yeah.
I'll make another
And higher.
suggestion to everyone out there. There are individual virtual assistants from the Netherlands to you name it, Philippines, from India, from everywhere, and here in the US. And then there's agencies that actually have virtual assistants. So if you don't get along with the one you have, or she's out sick, or she can't do whatever, they can pop somebody right into that position and fill that spot for you. So like might be I happen to use a company called FlexiWorks. They have multiple VAs. And if like God forbid my VA's out, I can get my work done and there's already a documented
Steve,
schedule
what's
what I
the name
need
of
done.
that company? Say it very slow so our listeners can get it.
Flexi Works, or you can just reach out to me and I'd be more than happy to give you an email address to John Javier, who's the owner of the company. I happen to be very happy. Everyone's got different requirements. If you have, spaceship rocket scientist work, maybe this isn't the right place to go. But if you need clerical, admin work, follow up, reads my calendar and sees when I have events that are overlapping because I always overbook. She fixes it. She emails the people, then changes it. She's my right hand man. Jill, is my right hand person that actually takes care of all the things I need done. And, God forbid, and I'll be honest, it took me two people before I found her, which is the right one. And then we just clicked. It's like hiring as an employee here. You have to try them out, put them on a probation, make sure they get it, send them the information, document your processes for them. The rest is gravy.
Yeah, I've
I'm
had
gonna I'm gonna throw
a
in a. Sorry, go ahead.
I had a VA agency called Executive Help Now. They're based in Atlanta, but they have VAs all over the world too. And they work with primarily they focus on executives, high level executives, and freeing them up. And they've had some stories. And I can't find it right this fast enough, but I also have someone that is handles VAs all over Central and South America.
And most of them will
Something.
work your hours. So if you work
Right.
Eastern time,
Yeah, right.
they
They'll
work
be there.
Eastern time.
Yeah. Something I'm
Good.
gonna throw out there. I mean, the VAs are great, but let's face it, they're behind the scenes, so to speak. But then you have your staff or who is front facing with the customer. What I mean by that is operational staff, right? People who are executing the work for the client. Like in my case, I have a marketing agency, and therefore we have weekly meetings with clients. My team meets with the customers. They have their structure, their process, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm getting at in this case is you may hire somebody that you're comfortable with. Question is the client comfortable with that person? Right. So
Yeah.
the front facing team to the customer is equally important, right? And I don't know, let's go back to
It's
20 years,
probably
right?
more important.
Yeah, it's exactly. And I'm just throwing out an example. 20 years ago, right, where you got the customers calling, you're talking to them on the phone, whatever that looks like, compared to nowadays, we're on Zoom and on other tools, on other platforms. But I think that is an entirely different aspect of what we need to keep in mind. The VAs are great. They take the entrepreneur's time and free it up, especially on the routine, mundane things that need to be done that AI can't do. Okay, you need a human being involved in that, especially nowadays. But then the front-facing team is a whole nother story. And Rochelle, I think you had something to say
Oh,
about
you
that.
need to train. I'm working with a design company right now. And of course, he does a lot of travel and can't be in two places at once. So his second in command she's an amazing designer. The worst presenter I've ever heard. I think my dog Cooper could do better. Okay? I mean, I've never seen we
I
could all
love it.
retire for the amount of ums and ahs that she did. I was like, oh my God. She had to be fully trained in how to present the company. She can show you the most gorgeous yellow pillow that can go to I mean, her design expertise are exquisite. Her presentation or how she speaks about the business, I was startled. You cannot just say that is a position. You need to test it. You need to say if this person is representing you, they have to create a PowerPoint, speak into the PowerPoint so that you would
Right.
say, this is okay to now. I don't think that they should deliver a PowerPoint. I'm saying you test from the PowerPoint. I always say that most companies have a very hard time articulating what they do effectively. They don't show me how do they pull a rabbit out of a hat. They speak about the most boring and common stuff. And I always say when you talk about your business, are you storytelling or boring telling? Did you just tell
Yeah.
me an amazing story that based on that story, I understand your expertise? And that's something you need to train somebody if they're representing you in any kind of either networking, client acquisition, anything. If they're representing you, they need to know the story, the history. They need to speak about your firm with eloquence so that somebody can say, I can't even wait to work for them. They're amazing. I can't wait. They're begging. They're almost like Velcroing themselves to your ankle. You walk out of that place with a limp. That's how you know you've been effective.
That's it.
Yeah. And
Guys, we're slowly going to wrap up. We're coming on to 30 minutes. Let's not wear our viewership out. With that in mind, we went through virtual assistants. We talked about Loom. We talked about PlexiWorks. We talked about hiring based on birds of a feather flock together. But with that in mind, let's start with Rochelle and her takeaway.
I want you to get specific with the talent that you need and who's going to deliver it. This generic stuff doesn't work.
Yep.
Go for it, Freddie.
the people that are communicating to the outside world need to be considered as directors of first impression. And to Rochelle's point and everybody else's, they need to be trained so that they can communicate effectively and create the first impression that you'd want them to create.
I'm gonna
Steve.
say, I knew you were gonna call my name. I just knew it.
I got to
Because
call
you always
everybody's.
go last because you're so kind. I'm gonna say, hire slow, fire fast, but more importantly, your employees are your first clients, quote unquote. So it's not that you should go around kissing their ass to keep them happy, but you want to get the right A players in line so that all your employees are wind them up and let them go do what they're really good at, and they're all happy and joyful and they get along well and they're all going after the same end goal that the company's trying to accomplish.
Sounds great. I'm going to go with build your team based on build your team based on the fact that they can represent you when you're not in the room.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
So with that, cool. And with that in mind, guys, now that we're done with takeaways, that's it for this week's Business Lunatics. Hit follow, subscribe, and join the Loonies next week for more no fluff, no BS, and more business madness. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.